Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Two Perfect Gentlemen. I am the Promise.
And I'm Dominion. And today we're going to be talking about Diablo 3. We have a lot of items to cover tonight. We've got everything from golden item duping to personal views on gameplay. And I'm hoping to touch on some of these forum posts today as well.
Yeah, Diablo 3's been out for a little over a month now, and it really, as a community, they couldn't be any more polarized. There's people who absolutely love the game. There's people who absolutely hate the game. There are people who hate the game but can't stop playing it, and there are people who like the game but will stop playing it, and everything in between. All of those points, it's really an extraordinary thing considering how many different opinions people have about one game.
Yeah, and you know what I think is really interesting is the fact that, and I think you linked this to me not too long ago. This same exact statements, everything was the same when Diablo 2 came out, and
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's the same for every game that comes out. World of Warcraft when it first came out,
Oh
it,
God, yeah. When WoW first came out, just pissing and moaning. 40 people is too much. It's too hard to get to 60. Too hard to get items. Blah 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 blah.
yeah, and now we're facing the same problems. So I mean, like with this golden item duping, that it's something that's always going to happen when a game first comes out. There's going to be things that are broken, and we just have to deal with it until Blizzard can fix it. Now I do feel that with this golden item duping where we were doubling the amount of money that we were making, canceling auctions on the auction house, making an exponential amount of cash, really saturated the market, and I don't think that there's any way that we can get rid of this gold.
Well, you know, I want to preface this topic by saying that it was a purported item and gold dupe. We personally did not see it or do it or know anyone who did do it. People saw it on streams, but you know, while streams are not always concrete and foolproof in terms of what you see is what you get. And Blizzard came out officially. Bashiak said that there was no such item and gold dupe. But like I said, people saw it on streams. People were posting screenshots of their banks that where their gold was literally in the billions.
Yep.
So it could be, it couldn't be. Either way, you're right. There's always a margin for error in any game, and anyone who played Diablo 2 will tell you, um, that if any type of manipulation or dupe does exist, it will get exploited to the max. I mean, Diablo 2's economy, literally in one day, was completely ruined. It went from a fairly stable economy using Stones of Jordan as currency, and in one day of a public dupe, the entire economy was pretty much wiped clean, and it boiled down to a very heavy barter economy where it was, what can you give me for this item in terms of quantity and quality. There was no hard currency anymore until they started adopting higher level runes as currency. Um, and it's just for a game like Diablo where gold is the hard currency of the game.
Mm-hmm.
You really need to try to find a way to get rid of that surplus gold, or else it's really just going to do nothing but hurt the economy.
Yeah, I mean, in this particular situation, I think that the same thing that happened in World of Warcraft, where people spend years just gathering up cash, only happened within a couple of days or weeks with Diablo 3. So what the Diablo team needs to do is get with the World of Warcraft team and say, hey, what can we do to possibly help bring down the cash flow? And really, the only option that they have is to put in-game legendaries, something that's not better than stuff that you could find, but stuff that'll like start up your Inferno build. something that'll go towards that, and you can just a gold dump, something where people can buy that shit and get started in Inferno.
Well, speaking of gold dumps, I mean, what better gold dump than quadrupling your repair costs?
Very true. Yeah, that's very
And
true.
that doesn't affect everybody. Like personally, I play a monk, and um when I don't venture into content that I know I'm not ready for, I die relatively little. But some of our friends who play wizards die constantly, and they don't have a lot of gold, and they're just going broke because they're squishy. They don't have the gear that they need, um, just to progress through Act One Inferno. So I mean, it's kind of a balancing act, but I mean that is a potential gold sink in terms of that. But there's also stuff they can do in game, like tweaking item drops, item rarity, stuff like that can balance out the economy in a way where, um, you know, really you either need to get the people who have a fuck ton of gold down, or get the people who have no gold up,
Yeah.
and that's going to take some really major overhauls, in my opinion, of item drop rates and their modifier rolls in terms of balancing out, what people are willing to spend for what they need.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I completely agree with you. And going back on your point about people dying a lot and quadrupling the amount of money for the repairs. Um, Personally speaking, after just trying to do Whimsyshire last night on the barb and the yeah, what a joke that was. Um, you know, I spent about 20K in repair bills, and as much as that hurt me, at least I know now that I can't do Whimsyshire. You know what I'm saying? If you can't do content, don't do that content. The game just came out, people. There is no way that Blizzard wanted you to finish this game in a month and 2 weeks. I mean,
Yeah.
what fun would that game be?
Well, I mean, it's part of that problem too is the player base that's playing Diablo 3 now. And with the inclusion of the annual pass, a lot of them are World of Warcraft players.
Yeah,
And a lot of World of Warcraft players are progression. How far can I go? How fast can I go there? How good can I get while I go there? So, I mean, that same mentality gets brought to Diablo, and all of a sudden, people are just rushing through a game that really does play better if you take your time and savor the experience as you go. And with how many people complained about the difficulty of Inferno, kind of wish you could go back and do that now, don't you? Because that whole experience leading up to Inferno was probably way more enjoyable. Um, but and you're right, when we ran Whimsyshire, it fucking sucked. But Blizzard said they wanted death to be meaningful. Well, now it is, because we don't want to do that anymore.
yeah,
So now we know that before we go back into Inferno Whimsyshire, we need more gear. So I mean, in that aspect, they hit the nail right in the head. You make it hurt, they won't do it anymore. It's like when your dog takes a shit in the rug, grab his head and rub his nose in it. Guess what? He's not shitting in the rug anymore. It's really the same principle for what they're doing with Diablo.
yeah. And Blizzard actually came out and they stated that at the beginning of an act in Inferno, you should be starting off in a defensive stance. So you should be using 4 defensive cooldowns and 1 offensive cooldown. So I've been reading up on some of the barbs, they're all complaining that they're not using any rage or fury. And all I got to say about that is that's the name of the game. Okay, we have to start off in a defensive stance and then eventually work our way up to 2 hands or dual wielding. I mean, that's the only way to play the game. And once you finish that act and you move on to the next act, you're back into a defensive stance again. And I think that is perfect.
Well, all right. As someone who played an ungodly amount of Diablo 2, to the point where I used to sit in my algebra class in high school and figure out increased attack speed breakpoints for my goddamn paladin. Okay, um, that's not the way a lot of old school players were brought up to play Diablo. You know, this whole idea of Inferno is so like totally difficult. Like that's fine in and of itself, but people like me who have been playing Diablo since pretty much Diablo 1, we don't play Diablo to feel challenged as a gamer. We play Diablo because we want to mindlessly kill things and get fat loot. And you know, in Diablo 2, they had very concrete loot tables in terms of, you know, what treasure class dropped from what monster level, where those monster levels were, what monster level the bosses were, so you could figure out who you needed to run to get what you needed.
Hmm.
And you know, people say, well, like, oh, but like, what fun is that? Well, it obviously was fun because we did it for 10 fucking years. So they clearly did something right.
Yeah.
Um, and that's something that has changed in Diablo 2, where I mean personally I think I would enjoy it a bit more if Inferno was as hard as it was pre-nerf, but you found but like the top tier of items still dropped in hell. You know, like I wish I could still farm hell, get all the awesome items that I want, and then if I want this like awesome challenge of super hard shit raping my face, I can go into Inferno optionally and do that with my fat gear.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree with that
But
statement.
instead, that fat gear drops in Inferno, and to me personally, that's counterintuitive to what Diablo has been up until Diablo 3.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can't say too much, you know, because I didn't play Diablo 2. The one thing that I don't like about what Blizzard's doing with this um, defense to offense during the whole playthrough is the fact that I can't play the character the way that I intend it to be played. Like I love the fact that I could take a two-hander, hit something in the face, and it explodes. Like I can picture myself literally going into a frenzy as if I were in the game, hitting something and it exploding. I remember my first reactions, and I don't know if you remember too.
I remember we were playing the beta together.
Yes, and when I killed something, I was
You were,
all giddy like a
yeah,
little
you
girl.
were giggling pretty much as you
Yeah,
exploded things.
yeah, because it was just a fantastic feeling,
It was a lot
and
of fun.
and and they took it away from me. They
Yeah.
they literally took it away from me. I'm now bashing things in with a one-handed sword. Now, to make it a little more fun for me, visually, make it more stimulating, why not add something where I could take my shield and hit it and it goes flying, and body parts go flying everywhere. Now, I mean, I've got this shield here. What the fuck does it do? I mean, really?
Well, I mean, it's defensive, and in something like that is very simple. You just, I mean, okay, hold on. Let me go back. I'm not a gaming programmer. It might not be simple to do, but in theory, um, all you would really have to do is just add the shield into a dual wielding attack animation.
Yeah,
So you smack with your axe, you smack with your shield. You know, like you don't actually have to. You don't even need to have the shield do any real damage per se. You know, even if you just alternate it so that you know, you hit with the axe does damage. You hit with the shield, does no damage. Hit with the axe, it does no damage. Hit with the shield, does the damage of the axe, or something like that. Where you know clearly you only have one weapon, but you get a little bit better feeling off of that
yeah,
visually.
yeah.
I see exactly where you're going with that.
Yeah, I mean, I like to compare it to 300, right? Like a barbarian is supposed to be this insanely brutal guy. I mean, you just look at him and you're like, fuck, he's gonna kill things. And you get into the game and he just whacks things with his axe. Yeah, things explode, but I mean, honestly, how many things do you really imagine are going to explode with a one-handed weapon?
Right, right, and yeah, and wizards advertised as this crazy spellcasting class, and you know really until you've got a fairly large accompaniment of eye level 63 gear, you're reduced, to kiting things in a circle with Blizzard and having a Venom Hydra in the middle, and you're just kiting them around this Venom Hydra as it kills them while Blizzard slows them. Like that's what you do until you get the gear to make, let's say like an Archon build, or until you get the gear where you can just do a Temporal Flux Arcane build. Um, but until then, you're just kiting shit in circles, and
Yeah,
you're this like badass arcane powerhouse. Like, doesn't make any sense
yeah, yeah. I
at all.
agree.
And I'm gonna take a little bit more time here as a veteran Diablo player. Part of the problem is that in Diablo 2, the your entire all right, think of it as like a city, right? Your entire play experience was centered around your talent build. Like that was the driving force behind whatever you did when you play Diablo 2. So that was like the center of your city. That was like your talent build was the foundation for what you were doing.
Hmm.
Okay, and then the gear that you needed to make that talent build successful were like the outlying districts of this city. You keep adding them on, it gets bigger and bigger and better and better.
Okay.
And part of the issue is that Diablo 3 relies on using like hard stats to increase your damage, like strength, dexterity, intelligence, increased attack speed, shit like that. In Diablo 2, um, like for the sake of argument, increased attack speed did increase your damage, but not directly. It was if you stacked enough of it, you could squeeze in an extra attack per second or per frame.
Sure.
There wasn't like gear didn't like there was strength, there was dex, there was it wasn't called intelligence, it was called something else, and then there was vitality. Okay, that was in Diablo 2, but the difference was strength and dexterity were only used to equip gear. They didn't have any real effect on your damage, and most gear didn't have strength and dex on it. What the gear did have was plus whatever to either your entire class's skills, one of your skill trees, or one particular skill.
Hmm.
So if you wanted, like a Fist of the Heavens Paladin, you would focus on gear that had +1, +2 to Paladin skills.
Hmm.
A specific plus to Fist of the Heavens. So like you always knew as a Paladin that like you were gonna want the Herald of Zakarum as your shield because it just +3 to combat skills, +2 to Paladin skills, like that was locked. And you knew that you needed X chess piece somewhere down the line because it had plus skills and let's say teleport, and that was really badass for your build. Like items were semi set in stone. Their specific stats weren't, but the overall gist of the item was. So you knew what you needed to find, what you needed to get to make this awesome skill build. And in Diablo 3, your skill build doesn't really matter beyond letting you not die.
Hmm.
It's your skill build is just really just to facilitate you trying to get further in the act without getting completely destroyed. And the gear um to further that goal. It's how do I get more armor, more block, more dodge, more resist, shit like that. Like we struggle to get resist in Diablo 3. In Diablo 2, you pretty much maxed out your resist in hell without even trying.
Wow.
Like I that probably sounds amazing to you as a Diablo 3 player,
Oh yeah.
but like by the time you had the gear to make your build like pretty awesome, you had already maxed out all of your resistances and you didn't even mean to.
Hmm.
Like that wasn't a focus of Diablo 2. It wasn't, you know, living or dying. It was making a really awesome skill build, maybe one that is really unconventional, like a melee sorceress, and then making it work.
Yeah. Now,
And
see, that's what turned me on to Diablo in the first place. And
yeah,
you know that being able to take and mold something that you're playing into whatever you wanted to play. And I remember that you got me turned on to Torchlight, and you said, yeah, so Diablo 2, like this. And when I heard Diablo 3 was coming out, I was so excited. And I was hoping, that maybe I could create a wizard where I could be a melee wizard and start taking things down. And that is just simply not the case.
Well, part of it too is that's not to say that in 6 or 7 months that won't be the case. You know,
Sure.
there might be the gear available to make that possible, but that's kind of like what I'm saying is you're pretty much just waiting that entire time to get a roll on an item that will let that maybe be possible. You're just waiting on the pure RNG of it. Where in Diablo 2, you were like, okay, I need to get these gloves, and hopefully they'll roll high. But even if they don't roll high, I can still use them.
Hmm.
But if I find a higher rolled pair, it'll be even better.
Yeah.
And that's in Diablo 3, that's not how it works. If you find the lower rolled gloves, you can't really use them because you're not going to do anything.
Yeah.
You're probably just going to die.
Well, the one thing that I really liked about this game too is when we were at BlizzCon, one of the things that they brought up was the fact that you could change your skills mid-fight. Okay, now that brought an entire new challenge to mind for me. Okay, um, like the fact that I could be fighting this set of mobs this time and this set of mobs this time, and I could switch in between was it just made the game that much more difficult for me because then I'd have to try to stay alive while I'm doing that.
Yeah.
And while I was really excited about that, then they told us about Nephilim Valor when the game actually released. And if you switch your spec, not only does it take 45 seconds for that move to even be able to be used, but you lose that buff. So
Hmm.
they completely restrict you from being able to go, hey, I'm fighting mortars. Maybe I should go for a more closer range build. Let me switch up real quick. And you would run away or get really close, switch, and then start punching that button. And I wouldn't say it's a game ruiner per se. Uh, it goes back to that World of Warcraft build where it's just a cookie cutter, man. It's a cookie cutter, and
Yeah.
we're being forced down that path. Now, as much as I love the fact that and how much sense it makes that you have to start off, in a defensive stance and work to a more stable offensive build, um, it completely rips away from what they showed me at BlizzCon, and I'm a little heartbroken by that. I really am.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do want to stress that, like, in Diablo 2, all of these like skill builds, they weren't available right away. There was always a flavor of the month. There's always one that was clearly better than the others. And towards the end of its lifeline, when the whole ladder was released, then there were really more skill builds that you could use. But there really was like the one clearly superior one, but there were also other ones too. I just want to make that clear. I'm not completely biased against Diablo 3 in terms of that.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, and I mean, initially I really liked what Nephilim Valor was about. It was, you don't run Mephisto 40 times in a row to try to get, that badass Skulder's ire. It was, you run all of Act 3
Hmm.
and get that badass Skulder's ire. Maybe. And I thought that was a really interesting aspect of the game now, was that it wasn't all about the bosses, it was also about everything in between.
Yeah.
Which at first seemed to me like it just made the game, a lot more accessible and enjoyable because you weren't doing these boring boss runs, you were doing whole act runs,
Yeah.
or fuck it, clearing the whole game in a difficulty level or something,
Hmm.
you know? And then they said, that, well, no, you can't change your skills. And I was like, all right, well, that's. And then this is before I even played the game. I'm thinking to myself, all right, well, you can't change your skills, so that means you got to find a badass skill build, or one that you feel really comfortable with, and then you kind of roll with it.
Yeah.
So you fuck around up until Inferno. You get a really neat skill build, and then if you feel comfortable with all your choices and all your runes, that's the one you run with for your Valor runs. And to me, that was still really cool because it was like you find your niche and then you run with it.
Yeah.
So that's even more towards which you've been talking about, this whole personalization element of it. You know, and then we get the game, and then as it turns out, you can't use all the skills you want, or all the skills that you enjoy,
Yeah.
because you can. If you don't stack these three defensive cooldowns, you're not going to make it through, like a highly elemental champion pack.
Yeah.
So it was almost as if like they gave you a fucking lollipop, and the name of that lollipop was personalization. And then as you went to go take that lick, they threw it in the ground and stepped on it.
Yeah. That
That's my
sounds about right.
lollipop.
That's
That
that's a good
smear on the
analogy.
sidewalk is my lollipop of personality
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Um, and it feels like playing WoW. There's
Yeah.
one build that right now for each class that is clearly the more efficient manner of clearing, like a magic find run. Um, I have noticed though that there have been some more diversity in terms of some of these builds, which is really
Mhm.
nice.
Yeah.
Monks are starting to clear using diabos. Monks are starting to clear dual wielding. So there's some variety popping up, and let's not forget, it's been a month.
Right.
So all we can really hope, I mean, honestly, is that Blizzard sticks with it as much as they stick with their other games, and then maybe it'll get
Ironed out.
tweaked, and maybe that element of personalization will come back. We don't know. It's still up in the air.
Speaking about lollipops, how do you feel about that real money auction house? I feel like it was a good idea in concept, but now that it's actually out there, it's not as great as I would have liked it to have been.
Well, I'm gonna go on record and tell you that I hate the auction house in total. Um, it doesn't belong in a Diablo game. It has no place, and it ruins one of the core aspects of the game, which is grinding out loot. That being said, I thought that if you were going to be adamant about having an auction house anyway, I thought the real money auction house was a great idea. Strictly because, you know, it botting and item selling were a huge part of Diablo 2.
Yeah.
Um, every time you were in like the US East lobby, there was just a constant wall of just website spam with the best prices and the best items and whatnot. And I thought that the idea of a real money auction house was a great idea because it would cut out that middleman, and it would let you broker these deals with your fellow players.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just like these farmers who were profiting from this. It was actually your fellow player,
Hmm.
and it added a different sense of accomplishment for, I just found this fucking item and it is amazing, and I'm gonna try to sell it to somebody and make some money off of it.
Hmm.
And that aspect of it's really cool, where you're getting a tangible reward for something that you found. Um, and as of right now, my only issue with the real money auction house is that people have no fucking clue what an economy is.
Yeah.
or how to work it.
Yeah.
Um, because everyone is just putting all of their items up for $250 and hoping for the best. So, I mean, I think given time, when people either A, get a fucking clue, or B, just leave the auction, the real money auction house, to the people who um understand how it works,
Hmm.
I think the prices will come down. I hope they will come down because, as of right now, you go in there and you're like, all right, I'm going to try to get, maybe a bargain weapon for like my tune. You type in some really entry level stats, and everything's like $60.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know, that's as
here's
much as the fucking game.
yeah.
Out of control.
I do have an interesting fun fact here though, and this is
Okay.
for all of our listeners out
I
there.
like facts. They're fun.
Um, After you make $9,500 a year, you are then taxed by the U.S. government. Legally, you are supposed to be taxed. So I've actually found out that if you could manage to sell something for $250 a day, you can actually make more than I do at my day during my day job, and I make about 55 grand a year. When you actually sell the 250 a day for 5 days a week, every week, you actually make close to about $91,000. So you could make this a job, but for those of you that are not making it a job and you already have a job or whatever, and you use the real money auction house, technically all the money that you make that's over $9,500 a year is supposed to be taxed. So all of you ladies and gents out there that are selling items on the real money auction house and you have a daytime job, you could actually be taxed on this shit. And I'd really like to hear some feedback from some of our viewers sometimes, for some time, and really like to get down to the bottom of this because this is something that's been troubling me since day one that the Real Money Auction House came out, and I didn't see it up on the forums for about a week after the Real Money Auction House came out.
Hmm.
Um, so I mean, as far as the Real Money Auction House goes, it's a great thing. It can be a great thing as far as you get to play a video game to make money, which is for us people that are not pro gamers, kind of a cool concept, right? You can just sit around all day, play video games 8 hours a day, make $250 a day. You're good to go. Um,
Yeah, you know what? Um, a really interesting point to be made, uh, concerning the recent nerf on increased attack speed.
hmm
And this is something that I don't think a lot of people have really brought up. But like, what happened to the people who had the means to completely deck out their character and increase attack speed gear? I mean, they potentially, because I mean, let's face it, before the nerf, I mean, increased attack speed was second only maybe to life on hit.
sure.
So, I mean, how much money, could people have potentially have spent on a bunch of increased attack speed gear? And again, they obviously have the means. And I know a lot of people who are going to listen to this and who might already have sort of realized this would say, well, fuck them. They pay that much money for a fucking uh, item, whatever. But that's not the point. The point is that they did spend this money on an item, and then they completely devalued everything that they just bought.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a lot of the stuff that I was reading on the forums prior to the starting the show has a lot to do with hey, I just worked so hard to get this build to work, or hey, I just worked so hard to get this kind of gear, and 1.0.3 rolls out and you guys completely nerf everything, and none of the fun builds that I just came up with, or none of the gear that I really enjoyed having makes any sense anymore, and I am dying constantly, which of course now we know is also costing you an arm and a leg just to fucking repair, which is really just out. To some degree, I understand where Blizzard's coming from, and especially with the influx in gold and the saturation. But for us players out there that are casual, and I know the World of Warcraft players that came over to Diablo 3 hate that word so much. Casual.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, fuck you,
Well,
dude.
you know
You're.
what? Fuck them, because you know what? World of Warcraft is a casual game.
That's right.
It
That's
didn't
right.
used to be, but it is now. So, if you get offended by that word and you're a WoW player, do me a favor, just take a big step back and go fuck your own face, because you play a casual game, and I'm sick of them harping on that. But that's a whole different subject.
Sure. Um, so I was looking through the forums, and I've got a couple of subjects that have come up, and I'm not going to name any names unless they're I actually want to give them praise. Um, but right now we got a lot of people that are trying to get their money back. Now, this is something that I've been wanting to discuss for a while now. If all of you can remember back to when you were 15 years old and that game came out and you thought it looked cool just based off the cartridge. There was no such thing as like a game commercial. They didn't exist then. I think World of Warcraft has pretty much broken that barrier. And I remember going to the store and picking this game up, and I would take it home and I would play it. Now, whether that game is good or bad is a dice roll. You never know. You never know if the game's going to be good or bad. There might be aspects of it that are shit, and there might be aspects of it that are really amazing. Um, and it's a dice roll. You don't ask for your money back because you're unsatisfied with the product. This isn't food. It's not something that you paid hard money for and you're going to consume. It's something that you're going to play and you're taking a dice roll on it. And I think a lot of people are taking this out of proportion a little bit.
Well, all right. To play devil's advocate, I mean, I myself personally, concerning Diablo 3, um, okay, I don't hate it, but I'm also not satisfied with it. And what annoys me is that even playing the beta, I didn't really have an inkling of how not satisfied I would be. Okay, watching the videos, reading the write-ups, peeking at what might lie ahead for me in the game past
Hmm.
what the beta had to offer, didn't really get a sense of disappointment until I played it. So I feel like a lot of people who are in my boat, who are longtime Diablo fans, probably feel the same way. They really didn't have any inkling of what was in store for them until it happened.
Sure.
That being said, okay, it's over a month into the game. Okay, you don't get to ask for your money back now. It's been a month. You don't get to buy a fucking suit. You don't get to wear it for a month and then just go back to the store and say, I want my money back for this, when it's clearly been used.
Yeah.
You've gotten a month's worth of play out of this. You don't get your money back.
Yeah.
I mean, possibly a partial refund, maybe, but like, you don't get to play a game you've purchased for a month and then expect that company to give you money back if you didn't like the game after a month. Because let's face it, getting to 60 is not like getting to 99 in Diablo 2. It does not take you a half of a year, it takes you less than a week.
Yeah. And
So,
I
you
think
know,
Blizzard's being really good sports about this too, because most stores, when you would go buy, like if I bought Donkey Kong 64 and I didn't like it after 30 days, tough shit. The receipt's no longer valid.
right, right. And I mean, I knew way sooner than a month that I wasn't really liking the game as much as I had hoped to. Did I return it? No, because it's Blizzard. I still have some faith in them, and I do hope that somewhere down the line they can make it a game that I can completely enjoy. Um, I also didn't pay for it at first. I got it for free from the annual pass, but then I ended up buying a collector's edition anyway. Um, but I didn't return it, and a month later, my monk does much less DPS than he did, a week ago. But I'll work past it. You just grind it out. There's no reason not to,
Yeah.
and that's something that, and I think part of that is some of the mentality that's been brought over from WoW, where everything is just spoon fed to you and given to you. And that's not how it's supposed to work in Diablo. You just keep plugging away till you get what you need. So, I mean, I do think that a large part of it has to do with the mindset, and that it is in fact incorrect for the type of game that these people are playing.
Yeah. And I think that some people have higher expectations than others, such as yourself, right? You're expecting something more in depth, probably in storyline, something
No,
that.
no, no, Diablo, fuck story in Diablo, man. Anyone who bitches about lore in Diablo, suck a dick. Lore's not the point. Lore's not the point. Getting fat, loot, and killing things is. I'm sorry, but continue.
Nah, fair enough. It's a hack and slash. That's what it's made for. But I mean, for some of you out there that do care about lore, I know there's quite a few out there that actually like to role play. I feel like Diablo doesn't go nearly as far in depth as it could have. The storyline was pretty predictable. Um, I didn't really see that Adria was gonna turn on us like she did. I thought it might have been somebody else, but I knew that something was a brewing. I actually thought it was gonna be Leia there for a while because she was so just fucking nuts a couple of times throughout the gameplay.
Yeah.
But one thing that I wish that this game would have had is more randomization. So when I go into a map now, after playing for a month, casually, by the way, not
Right.
not like playing it constantly, I I am finding myself knowing exactly where to go based off the map. And that's not something that I was really looking forward to. I was kind of hoping that there would be some mystery left around every corner. And now, in Inferno mode, when I run into a set of mobs, champion mobs, I just say, fuck. And then I hit my Berserker button and go to town. So, um, there's no like, oh shit, I need to do this now. There's none of that. And I really like that when I first started playing this game. I would come around a corner and there'd be a champion pack and it would just completely demolish my face. And then I'd have to learn and go back. Now, for all you hardcore players out there, we can learn a lot from you guys, especially with the new repair costs. So I want to let everybody know that if you don't watch some of these streams out there right now for the hardcore people, they're going to tell you what's good and what's not good because they never die. So um, if you're really having a problem killing shit, then you should probably do a little more studying, a little more research, because that's what all Blizzard games are about. It's all a number crunch. It's all trying to figure out what the best build is. I wish that it was more like, this build suits me, because then I could play the way I want that character to be played. But I digress.
Well, I mean, all right. To answer your first point, in terms of your total randomization, even in Diablo 2, sections of every level were built off of templates, and there may or may not have been. Well, I mean, the levels in Diablo 2 were way bigger than levels in Diablo 3,
Mm-hmm.
but you could still, after enough time, you could still run through a level in Diablo 2 and get a vague gist of where you had to go based on the architecture of the templates.
Yeah.
So I mean that's something that's been a factor since back then. It's never going to be completely random. Um, and I think the bigger levels of Diablo 2 kind of gave it the illusion of complete randomness, but it really wasn't. I mean, anyone who ran Mephisto as much as I did knows that you somehow knew exactly what was going to lead you to the stairs down to Durance level 3. You just knew it by looking at the shit in front of you. It just happened. Um, and as far as your comment with the champion packs, you also got to remember, dude, you haven't made it to Act 2 yet in Inferno. It's a whole different beast. Um,
Well, I
you
attempted it.
will shit your pants
I attempted it, and you're very right. I did
when
shit
you
my
get that
pants.
first pack of champion bees. You will shit your pants. Um, but the only difference that I can actually come up with in your defense is that whereas in the earlier difficulties when we found a champion pack like this, we said, "Oh fuck, we all died, we all regrouped, and we were like, all right, let's do this," and then we stepped up our game, and then whether we outmaneuvered them, outsmarted them, out whatever, we ended up winning. But in Inferno, it's not really a matter of you necessarily stepping up your game and putting your best foot forward. It's actually like you're 10 resistances shy of not getting one shot by his desecration,
Yeah,
or you just got vortex back into the pack, and now because of collision you're blocked in and you're dead. It's stuff like that. It's more frustrating because it's more things you can control in the moment, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's stuff you can control either before or after the fact, but not during.
yeah,
And I completely feel where you're coming from on that. It did seem like when we were in normal and nightmare hell, it was still within our control. And then come Inferno, it's not, which is a bummer.
yeah. Well, another thing that I think would have been really cool for randomization effect would be like side quests. So when I load a map, instead of finding uh, Hadrig's uh, uh, bitch, I'll call him his bitch. Instead of finding Hadrid's bitch, maybe you have to go find an anvil somewhere, or to help build up the blacksmithing supply, or just something that makes the game a little more different every time you play it.
Um, well, they kind of did that. They kind of did that with um, the randomized events that happen in each of the acts.
That's true.
Um, and I mean, you got to remember, dude. Last night, I believe, was when we discovered um that King of the Hill event doesn't always happen in the woods in Act One,
That was interesting. Yeah.
right? Like literally we had always had that event, and then last night we learned that that actually doesn't happen all the time. That is random. Probably has a high chance, but it's still random. And I mean, personally, I still haven't found Bashiok in Act Two, so I haven't gotten that achievement. So I mean, um, so there is that an element of like the events and the side quests, and also I don't think I would have minded necessarily if they had included side quests. It's never really been a part of Diablo,
Hmm.
but I don't think I would have minded. If it had given you um adequate rewards or something, some kind of incentive to actually go and do it, besides skipping it to go kill more champion packs or bosses. I think that if executed properly, that could have been really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Um, Now, I just going out on a limb here. I want to say that tonight or sometime in the near future, I want to actually try to, and I'm going to record it. I want to try to create a melee wizard and see how far I can get with it.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. You might be able to get through uh normal. Might be able to get you might be able to get through a nightmare. It would take you a while. I don't know if you'd be able to get through hell necessarily.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, if I go for a heavy dex int and uh, armor base build, I think I could probably pull it off.
I mean, how do you even how do you even melee swing? Do you just elective mode a skill off of your left mouse button?
Now that I haven't worked out the
I hadn't
details
even
just
thought
yet,
of that.
but
Well,
you
I
know,
mean, I
I'd like to
get
give it a shot.
because when you start as a wizard, you have magic missile, and then your right mouse button is your wand. So yeah, I think if you manage, not manage, but if you just elective mode drag the skill off of your mouse button, that should turn it into your melee if you're using a melee weapon.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know. I mean, that's something that really makes sense to me in terms of that.
All right. Well, anyway, that was just a side topic.
Yeah, yeah, could happen, it could not, who knows? And some of the I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. I mean, some of the biggest complaints that we've been seeing on the forums is that um, Blizzard is this like power hungry, tyrannical, autocratic entity when it comes to Diablo 3.
Yeah,
And, like, the, the community managers don't give a fuck what you say. You know, they have ninja nerfed eye level 63 item drops in Act 3 and 4 in a stealth attempt to stabilize the economy. Um, what else have they been saying? That they have they have changed monster properties under the radar without telling anybody, as an attempt to either make Inferno harder or easier, depending on who you talk to. And really what it boils down to is the game is based on a pair of dice.
yeah,
Every part of this game is based on a pair of dice. And people, I don't think, realize that fully yet. Like, if you do a Siege Breaker run the day after the patch, and your total percentage of eye level 63 items is 6%, and the day before the patch it was 20%, guess what? The dice didn't roll in your favor today. They
yeah,
probably didn't ninja nerf drop rates. You just didn't get lucky, you know?
yeah.
Same thing with the monster modifiers. Uh, yesterday, I swear to Christ, back to back, I faced, the big spiky motherfuckers in the halls of agony,
Hmm.
like back to back, no joke, like 4 times, and they were all reflect damage, desecration, molten,
Oh, that's unfortunate.
vortex,
Yeah,
and I actually died on my monk, which doesn't happen often, and it was like back to back to back to back to back. Now, if I was so inclined, I could say, well, Blizzard has clearly seen that I am a melee class who's weak against these modifiers and has given them an increased chance of happening. Or I can say the dice didn't roll in my favor today.
yeah,
And that's something that I don't think a lot of the community realizes, is that it's not a grand evil scheme. It's the numbers not going in your favor, you know. It's the same. I don't. That's the only way to really explain it. It's like gambling. It either goes your way or it doesn't. There's no in between. That's just the way it is.
yeah. But I mean, going back to your earlier statement about the most of the community is World of Warcraft players. Um, the whole thing is they're used to, hey, I'm gonna down this boss today and he's gonna drop. He has a chance to drop this loot, this loot, this loot, and it always has the same stats on it. And they're not so much inclined to be used to completely random game, you know. And I gotta admit, sometimes I'll even look at something and I'm like, well, shit, this is kind of odd. But then I play it the next day and I'm like, oh, they obviously didn't change anything because instead of two rares dropping off this boss, I did actually get three like I did the day before yesterday. So, you know, I can sort of. I'm not going to say that I understand really where they're coming from. They're just not used to it yet. And I think once they get used to it, it won't be so damn bad. They'll be like, ah, well, fuck, I lost the dice roll. Maybe tomorrow. And you just keep farming and farming and farming until you get the shit that you want.
Yeah, that's just the name of the game. I mean, if I hadn't spent as much time as I did waiting for that goddamn legendary Balrog armor to drop off of motherfucking Nithilak and not getting it to drop, I might be, differently inclined in this situation. But I'm used to being disappointed by the things that happen in Diablo. And, I don't think a lot of people are. And you know what? It's not just WoW. It really isn't. It really is just games in general right now.
Yeah.
Um, the, in my opinion, games have hit a low in terms of innovation and complexity.
Indeed.
We've hit a little bit of a drought. I don't think it's going to last. But I mean, it is the overall gist of the community, and portions of Diablo 3 are counterintuitive to that mentality, and there's a little bit of butting of heads going on.
Right.
Um, and like you said, people just have to get used to it, but it is going to take time. And I would like to remind everyone, it's been a month, 1 month, 30 days plus a little bit. Nothing happens in a month. You got to give it time. Um, were there things that Diablo 3 launched with that it probably shouldn't have? Yes. Could more polish have gone into the game between the beta and the release? Yes. Myself personally, I am one of the few people who have really bad caching issues with the game. Because whether you guys know this or not, the game is constantly streaming data from the server to your computer. A lot of the game is not
Local to the
client
machine.
side, it's
Yeah.
server side. And it's the server sends it over to your computer caches it until you exit the game. My computer, for some reason, my processor has a really hard time caching the data. It happens to a lot of other
Mm-hmm.
people as well. So as a result, when new things happen in our games, sounds, graphics, places, people, we get really bad FPS issues, which has been present since I think patch 15 of the beta. Blizzard knew about it. It didn't get fixed. I can only presume that they could not figure out a fix for it in time. But be that as it may, it still exists, and that's one of many things that were present during the beta didn't get fixed in time for the release. And I know everyone's argument will be, well, it's been 12 years, so what the fuck? Well, I can almost guarantee you that whatever problem you're bitching about that was probably in the beta, it didn't exist in the game 6 years ago, or 7 years ago, or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So that 12-year development time argument really is, a facile argument when you consider most of the problems at hand. Don't be stupid. It wasn't there 8 years ago or 10 years ago. You can't use that as an excuse. Not all 12 years of that time were used for actually developing a game. They
Well,
were,
and
they were for storyboards, art,
and you know,
characters, stuff like that.
yeah. And one thing that I'd like to bring up too is I don't know about you, but 12 years ago I was 11. So my perception of things is completely changed. Like I know that when I play a certain game, this is going to be the outcome, and if it's not the outcome, it's going to be kind of the outcome. So for me, in order for a game to be challenging, I need to, or in order for it to be entertaining for me, I have to have it be challenging. So, when I used to play Donkey Kong 64, for instance, in order to get from one place to another on the pipes, you had to use Lanky Kong, and he had to be on his hands. Otherwise, you were going to fall off, and you would never get across the pipes. So I wish that games, and I think this is where the slump is coming from. To be honest with you, I think the games have lost that complexity where it's more skill, not gear based. Um, and a lot of Blizzard games are like that, with the exception of the RTSs, of course, which are still fabulous. Um, but when it boils down to it, I'm kind of getting tired of playing games that are so gear dependent.
Yeah, but I mean, you know what? That this is really turning into a discussion about the industry in general, and that's
That's true.
a very large discussion for another time. And we are running out of time as it is. So I think we've said what we wanted to say.
Yeah.
In terms of the topic at hand, and I'm sure next week we will have more to say on Diablo because let's face it, every day is a new crises uh, in the forum. So
Oh yeah.
I'm sure we'll have more to talk about because drama's never short, never short.
No, not at all. Okay, so everyone, next week we are also planning on possibly putting together something for a charity. So we're going to be streaming that live up on uh, Twitch. I hope everybody tunes in for that. Um,
Yeah, and I don't want to give anything away, but melee demon hunters.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just gonna leave it
melee
at
demon
that.
hunters in all whites,
Hardcore.
hardcore, and
We'll see what
we're hoping we
happens.
can make some fun out of that. But
We'll see what happens.
for now, it is June 22nd, 2012, and we will see you next time.
Later, folks.